Whakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tātara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, tihei, mauhi ora.
Morena, everyone. So welcome to today's Wellington Regional Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee. My name is Steph James. I'm not Letitia Lowry, who unfortunately is unwell today, so I've stepped in for her. And until the new chairperson is selected, I'll be leading us through this morning's meeting. Please let us know if you do intend to leave the meeting. And for our new councillors in Wellington, we use these microphones so that we can pick up on the live stream and for our colleagues online. So if you're able to just touch it with the green light, you're good to go to speak there. Morning tea will be at 10:30 a.m. Lovely. Do we have any apologies? I see none. On members to declare any conflicts of interest that they may have in relation to the items on the agenda. I see none. Confirmation of minutes. So if there is a member who was present at the last meeting, I call on someone to move the minutes of the last joint committee meeting.
So moved. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for the motion?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Lovely. With that being moved and seconded, I now put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And those against, raise your hand and say no. Great, I declare the motion carried. There are no items not on the agenda and there is no public participation for today's meeting. Lovely. So in accordance with Standing Order 19.1, we will move that 2.2 be considered first as in accordance with Standing Order 19.1, the chairperson accorded precedence to item 2.2, election of the chairperson and deputy chairperson. So we will kick off with that. I will introduce the report and I will take it as read. Do we have any questions before we move on through this process? Great. So firstly, we will move for clause 1. So may I have a mover to move clause 1, which is receive the information? Thank you. Councillor Hayward. And is there a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. Lovely. I now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. I declare that motion carried. Lovely. Now, do we have a mover for clause 2, which is to adopt the voting system for appointment of the chairperson and deputy chairperson? And I will ask that that person state whether they'll be voting system A or system B.
Move that we go with option B.
Great, thank you. And is there a seconder?
Councillor Phone.
Councillor Foon. I now put that motion to the vote. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, please say no. Great, I declare that motion carried. As per voting system B, I now call on nominations for the position of chair.
Yeah, could I please nominate Councillor Jeff Hayward from Porirua for chair?
Lovely.
Happy to second that, Madam Chair.
Lovely. Wonderful. Are there any other nominations? Perfect. There being none, I put the motion to a vote. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Lovely. I declare that motion carried. I declare Councillor Hayward as the chairperson and Joint Committee for the 2025 to 28 triennium. Lovely. I now call nominations for the position of Deputy Chair.
I move Councillor Andy Mitchell for Deputy Chair.
Again, happy to second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for Deputy Chair? Perfect. There being none, I put the motion to a vote. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Lovely. I declare the motion carried, and Andy Mitchell as the Deputy Chairperson of the Wellington Regional Waste Management. Councillor Hayward, I now invite you to assume the position of Chair.
We'll take a moment to just give me the ability to move over.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Everybody likes the sausage being made, don't they? No mai, haere mai, piki mai, kaki mai. Welcome, everybody. More formally, before I do, though, I'd like to thank our officers for helping us proceed with this part of the process. It's not normally them having to lead out those meetings, so please give them your thanks. Cool. Yes. We'll make sure you get a cup of tea at the end. Let us, therefore, where are we up to? Okay, item 2.1, Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Joint Committee Governance Arrangements for 2025-2028. I will welcome Amelia Daly to introduce the report. This item has been put on notice, so officers will be aware that they do not need to repeat everything in here, but please, the opportunity is yours to now speak to anything that is in here that is of specific note or anything that has changed since the item was on notice, and then we will go to questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, and as noted, this is a fairly straightforward report. It's a report that will facilitate your meetings for the full trainium. So just to briefly cover off, you're being asked three things. One is to adopt a meeting schedule. It's proposed to be quarterly and on dates that avoid clashes with your respective council meetings. The terms of reference do provide for them to be held on as required basis. You're also being asked to appoint Porirua City Council as the administering authority for this joint committee. Wellington City Council has done this for the previous two trainia, so this will be a handing over of that role. And also in that you're able to adopt the standing orders of Porirua City Council, and as the officers there are familiar with those standing orders, we would recommend that as the most efficient approach. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Amelia. I'll open for questions. I don't think there are going to be any. Okay, so let's go to mover. Is there a mover for this motion? I'll go with, we'll start with Councillor Mitchell, and I'll take the second from Councillor Al-Rubani, is that, if I got that? Al-Rubay. Oh, because that's right, as the alternate, they cannot, yes, so actually, that's a good point. If you're an alternate, voting, yes. So, Councillor Foon, would you in the... I would love to. There we go, that's sorted now, isn't it? Okay. I don't think there's any opportunity for debate, except I would just want to quickly note to thank the Wellington City Council for their service of secretariat to this committee. This is the third term that I've been on this committee, so I've never known any other council taking this responsibility on. We should be very grateful for the service of the staff who have worked diligently to ensure that these meetings go promptly and in order. So, any other... I'm actually going to call that my right of reply. Right of reply would be yours, actually. Councillor, do you want to say anything? Nope. Okay, it's been moved. It's been seconded. It was on notice. We've talked. We've had questions. We are now going to go to the vote. All those in favour, put your hands and say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions. That is carried. We're moving through to item 2.3, Wellington Regional Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2023-2029 Progress Update. Can we have Stephanie and Yorn to come up and introduce the report? Again, consider these items on notice. Councillors have read their materials. I expect they have. But please, officers, feel free to highlight any specifics or anything that has changed in status since the item on notice, and then we will go to questions. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just noting that we do have a few new members around the table, so I thought we might just do a quick round of introductions for ourselves. So my name's Jörn Schatzer. I'm the Head of Climate and Waste and Resource Recovery at Hutt City Council.
I'm Yvette Falloon and I am the Regional Advisor for the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan.
And kia ora, I'm Stephanie Steadman. I'm at Wellington City Council Acting Waste Strategy Manager.
Thank you. Do you want us to go around the table with regards to our councillors?
Why not?
Why not? I'll start down the left-hand side, the right-hand side.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Grace Ayling from Carterton District Council.
Good morning, I'm David Holmes, Marston District Council.
Morena, I'm Afnan Arabai from Wellington City Council.
Morena, no mai haere mai Laurie Foon, Wellington City Council.
Kia ora koutou, ko Andy Mitchell tōku ingoa. I'm from Hutt City Council.
You know who I am.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Martin Halliday ahu. I'm from the fantastic Kapiti Coast, but I have to say, I think the sun's shining a bit better down there here today. And that'll be the one time this trinium, I'm sure I'll say that.
Morning, my name's Robbie Stillwell. I'm the Waste Project Manager for Kapiti Coast District Council.
So, online, let's start with, I cannot see their names. Councillor Round.
Morning everyone, Rachel Round and I'm from Carterton District Council. I'm the alternate, so I'm online this morning. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Caffel.
Yeah, Gary Caffel, alternate Masterton District Council.
Councillor Botica.
Morena, ko Steve Botica tēnei, KCDC, also the fabulous sunny Kapiti Coast.
Councillor Clark.
Kia ora koutou, ko Rachel Clark tōku ingoa. I'm from South Wairarapa District Council and I'm dialing in from Port Chalmers.
I didn't know your jurisdiction extended so much.
I have so much power down here. I get to wash dishes at my daughter's cafe, so there you go.
Long may she reign. I think that's all of our whakawhanaungatangas, so let us proceed to the item. Officers, the floor is yours.
Kia ora. So as this is the first meeting of the triennium, we're just going to do a very quick run through of, I guess, the background of the WMP and a couple of the key things from the Waste Minimisation Act that relate. So what we're going to cover is what a WMP is and the requirements for councils under the Waste Minimisation Act, a quick summary of the Wellington Region WMP, which is for 2023 to 2029, the structures and roles currently under the WMP, and a quick overview of the waste levy, which is used in part to fund the implementation of the WMP. So under the Waste Minimisation Act, councils are required to provide efficient and effective waste management and minimisation within their district. And so for the purpose of doing so, they're required to adopt a waste management and minimisation plan for the district. Waste management and minimisation plans must provide for objectives, policies and methods for achieving effective waste management and minimisation with the district. And methods include things such as services, facilities, other waste management and minimisation activities that are either provided by the councils or planned to be provided by the councils. Also, it must include how implementing the plan will be funded, and if a council is going to be providing grants under the WMP, a framework for how that will be done. Councils can choose to either do individual WMPs or they can have joint WMPs with other TAs for the whole or part of their district, which is what we have done here in the Wellington region. The WMPs must be reviewed every 6 years and then a decision made whether the current WMP should be amended whether it should continue without amendment or whether it should be revoked and replaced with a new WMP. And so in the last review process, a new WMP was put in place for the Wellington region. Also just a note that the waste levy funding that's received by the councils, which I'll cover off a little bit later, must be spent in accordance with the council's WMP. And so one of the parts of reviewing the WMP is consideration of the waste hierarchy, which I have just put up on the screen for reference. And the waste hierarchy is just a framework which shows the preferred order of managing waste, with the most preferred options such as reduce, rethink, redesign at the top of the hierarchy, and the least favoured options such as final disposal at the bottom. And we're aiming to focus on the top of the hierarchy in order to reduce extraction of resources, keep resources in use, and prevent unnecessary disposal to landfill. So the current WMP for 2023 to 2029 was adopted by the 8 councils between December 23 and February 24, and this is the 3rd joint WMP for the region. And also worth noting that having a shared WMP is fairly unique for a region of our size. And while there are other large regions in the country that work together on waste matters, having a shared WMP between this many councils is quite rare. This WMP has an increased focus on collaboration, emissions reduction, and the move towards the circular economy, which is outlined through the objectives, targets, and actions for the region. A regional implementation plan was also developed in 2024 and was endorsed by the Joint Committee September 2024. So just a brief outline of what the WMP contains. It contains a background and context on the existing waste situation in the region, the current challenges that the region is facing, a vision, 9 objectives, targets, and 1 regional action plan and 6 local action plans. And the reason the action plans are split out this way is to ensure that the region can take advantage of all the benefits of working together, while also having specific local actions to meet the needs of the local areas. And so I'm just very quickly going to run through some of the key aspects of the WMP, but we won't spend too much time on it. So the vision for the WMP is working together to care for our resources, for less waste and a greater place, which is reflecting, I guess, our move up the waste hierarchy. The 9 objectives, which are quite small on screen, but you can refer back to them, which also highlight the aim to move up the waste hierarchy and increase focus on emissions reductions, collaboration, accessibility of services and infrastructure, and resilience in the region. The regional targets, there's 6 of them and then 3 sub-targets, which we're working towards over the course of the WMP, with the primary target being the reduction of waste to landfill by 30% by 2030. And progress on these targets are provided annually through the annual progress update, and the update for year 2 of the WMP, or 24-25, is attached to the report today. There is also 10 regional actions which the region has committed to working together on regionally to progress, and the plan for how we will implement this is outlined under the regional implementation plan, which contains the projects that we're working on together either regionally or sub-regionally. And updates on the major projects under the implementation plan will be provided quarterly to the Joint Committee through a major projects update. And this will include projects such as the organics project being carried out between Hutt and Wellington, the construction and demolition waste management one underway at PCC alongside KCDC and Hutt City, and things like the future of residual waste investigation, which will look at long-term disposal needs of the region over the next years. And then also for reference, we've just included the C&D roadmap that was developed last year. And this was just some work that was completed to look at how we are planning to tackle or address C&D waste in the region, which is one of the focus waste streams alongside organic waste. And this just shows the work to date on C&D and then the upcoming projects and planned projects in the future to meet our desired end state. So the next thing I'm just going to quickly talk about is the current structure that's set up under, I guess, to implement the WMP. So the region has established a steering group, which is made up of the waste and resource recovery managers in the region, who are working collaboratively to drive the implementation of the regional WMP. And this is the group that reports back to the Joint Committee on progress against the WMP on a quarterly basis. The steering group meets in person every 6 weeks and then meets in between that online on a fortnightly basis. And then these reports come to the Joint Committee, who oversee the implementation of the WMP, consider reports and advice from the steering group, and in some cases make recommendations back to their member councils on decisions. As part of the steering group, there are 2 regionally funded roles that support the delivery of the regional aspects of this WMP. One is my role, which is the regional advisor role, which is hosted at Wellington City Council. And then there is also a program manager that has recently been established, which is hosted at Porirua City Council, which is Monica, who is here. And then the steering group also has 2 co-chairs that are elected annually by the group, and the co-chairs run the 6 weekly meetings and represent the steering group on behalf of the region, which is Jörn and Steph here. So the final thing I'm just going to go through is around the waste disposal levy. So this is a levy that is applied per tonne of waste that is taken to landfills, including the Class 1 landfills, which are the municipal landfills, construction and demolition landfills, and managed or controlled fills. So for every tonne that goes in, the money goes into the waste levy, and then 50% is allocated to central government, which includes the Waste Minimisation Fund and a couple of other things under there, and the other 50% is allocated to local government. And currently the local government portion of the waste levy is currently just split by population. And one of the key things with this is that previous to July 2021, the levy was set at $10 a tonne and only applied to municipal landfills. But since then it has been expanded to cover not only Class 1s but those additional types of landfills, and has also increased up to $65 a tonne in this financial year. And this is just a little graph to show how that's changed the funding received from the waste levy by the Wellington region. So previous, I guess it is at the $10 a tonne, and then in 21-22, that's when the increase started. So currently, the territorial authorities may only spend the levy money on the matters to promote or achieve waste minimisation and in accordance with the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan. And we are required to report on this levy spend annually. The levy money must also be retained if the councils have either not adopted a WMP or have not reviewed it within its required timeframe of 6 years. So the last thing is that between April and June last year, there was a consultation on proposed changes to the Waste Minimisation Act and the Litter Act, but part of that was on proposed changes to the waste levy. So one of the changes proposed was that the local government allocation be changed so that 20% of the levy, or the local government allocation of the levy, is split flat between the councils, and that the remaining 80% is split on population. And that was, I guess, intended to make it more equitable for smaller councils or councils with large geographic areas or high like holiday or tourist populations. And then there was also a proposal to expand the criteria for what the allocation can be spent on, which includes expanding it to managing emergency waste, remediation of contaminated sites and closed landfills, compliance, monitoring and enforcement of mismanaged waste, which includes litter and illegal dumping, and then on activities that reduce environmental harm or increase environmental benefits. And this brings it slightly more in line with the new requirements for central government, which changed, I think, in 2024 to expand to some of these other areas. And at the time, 5 of the 8 councils submitted on these proposed changes. But we don't have a clear timeline yet on when we'll see what's happening with these changes. So that's the end of our summary presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, Yvette. Thank you. He pātai. This is the opportunity now for members of the committee to ask questions in regards to this item. I will work with a speaking order if there is anybody. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. For the benefit of us all, but particularly new members, can you just talk about where we sit currently in the 6-year life cycle of the plan, given that there are 2 triennium included in that process? So where do we sit in terms of the life cycle of the plan and looking forward to the reviewing and renewing part of it, in particular, what happens in this particular triennium?
So I would say we're currently in year 3 of the plan, and in terms of the review requirements, we'll have to officially review it by December 2028 because the previous one was officially reviewed December 2022.
Just adding to that, the intention is very much at the moment that the focus is on delivery, and I think that's been coming very clearly through from the last triennium, is that we've developed WMMPs. This one is quite different to the one before, has more of an emissions and more of a circular economy focus, and we've spent quite a bit of time to develop the new bylaw, which was implemented starting 2021, and some other things that are more sort of, getting the wheels into motion, so to speak. So like the implementation plan, for example, but it's also came through very strongly at the end of last triennium as like actually councillors really want to see delivery, and that's certainly the intention for us to do that. Recognising though that there are challenges with herding the cats, so to speak, in terms of having 8 councils. It is quite a unique setup in New Zealand. So we do have regional actions and a number of regional projects, and we can talk about those in terms of the progress update shortly after this item. So there is some progress being made, but in terms of leaving aside the mechanics of it, in terms of actually delivering on the targets and the objectives, I do think there is still some way to go, because a lot of the big changes that would actually drive this have not been put in place yet for different reasons. And one example for that, and we can talk about this later during the project update, is the intention to introduce a FOGO collection service for Wellington and Hutt, which may or may not go ahead, and still has to go through some time before it will actually hit the road, so to speak, probably at the earliest at this point, 2028. And that's getting pretty close to the end of the current WMMP. And the other aspect is construction demolition waste. Again, unless there is diversion and processing facilities, processing capacity in place, you can't actually divert anything yet. And Porirua is just about to, so is it Wasteco or Civic, what used to be Civic, so they're about to start operating their facility in Porirua from December. And that will then be the starting point for actually starting to see some diversion. So coming back around in terms of the delivery of the plan, we do have some way to go, and there is work to be done.
Any other questions, Councillor Mitchell? Councillor Foyne.
Yes, and apologies if this was in the report, but I just wanted to know how we would measure the 2027 target that coming up quite quickly.
May I suggest that we talk about this particular question as part of the progress update, because it does talk about those very things.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think you might have answered it, but I think my question here was kind of what are officers finding most challenging, or what's keeping you awake at night about this kaupapa?
This is probably coming through in the progress update. effectively, there are some things that councils can control and do themselves, and things like potential FOGO collection service is one of the things that we can do ourselves if we so choose. But there are other things that are much more commercially driven, like the diversion of C&D construction and demolition waste. Excuse all the acronyms. You'll get used to them very quickly. That effectively, we are still in an environment where effectively landfill disposal is the cheapest in comparison to alternatives. And one example for that might be treated timber. It's probably reasonably straightforward to pull it out and separate it out, but unless you co-combust it up in Golden Bay, there's really very little you can do with it. So, and then it becomes a question of what's the transport cost to get it there compared to the cost of actually just putting it into a landfill. So there are some things that we can drive and do ourselves, but in a number of areas, the best we can do is enable and facilitate, because it comes down to the dollar. Is it what's the most cost-effective way forward for businesses?
No more questions. Deputy Mayor Ayling.
Thank you. I just had a question with regards to the funding of the two FTEs. Is that split on a population basis or an even 8 split?
Yes, so that's based on population. A lot of the cost for delivery of projects, regional projects that are purely regional, are based on just population. So Wairarapa would have a relatively small funding share compared to the bigger councils. Is there any other thing to say about that? Yeah, so that's the current situation. Maybe just one additional comment. There are some projects that are what we call sub-regional, or there might be projects that some councils don't want to participate in because it might not be relevant to them. So in that case, the cost is shared separately. So they don't, smaller councils or councils that don't participate wouldn't be contributing to that. So for example, the FOGO project between Wellington and Hutt, Lower Hutt, sorry, not just Upper Hutt, is just between us rather than the rest of the region at this point.
Any other questions, Deputy Mayor? Cool. Councillor Halliday.
Just more, just thinking a little bit ahead. I just note that we're looking at a review around 2028. I guess, I think I read somewhere that the idea of the review is not necessarily to reinvent the wheel. It will be potentially an updated process from where we are now. So when you're talking about some of the projects aren't getting underway or we're getting things moving at the moment, we're sort of getting things moving with that longer view that this will be potentially exercises that will stretch across potentially multiple plans. Would that be a fair call?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we say review, it doesn't necessarily mean that we do have to create a completely new WMP. It may just be reviewing it, making sure it's still fit for purpose, and then it may or may not result in changes to the current WMP. Although I would expect there would probably be some, given by then it would have moved on in terms of time.
Cool. The reason I flagged that, and it's maybe something for the council officers and chair to note, that December 2028 is just after the next elections. So there's obviously that shutdown period coming with council. So just factoring that into any review process might be a good idea to try and get that finished a little bit earlier than that.
So one thing about the review is that typically the waste assessment is something that is prepared in the background that will inform the review. So that is actually a reasonably administrative procedure. There's really not a lot of political aspects to it other than when it goes to consultation and obviously finalising the plan. The final plan wouldn't have to be in place till, I believe, the end of 2029. So there is quite a lot of time for that to be finalised.
Excellent. No, thank you.
Kind of a 2-year project.
Just thought I'd flag it, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Foon.
Yeah, just a bit of an overview how officers have found like the shift in government priorities and how that's affecting our work, because I guess councils have had some determination to really drive things forward, but when the government's shifting its priorities, how is that affecting our plans, and if at all?
It does affect it indirectly and directly. So a useful example is that when the government was considering changes to the Act, which Evie just talked about this earlier, whatever information is coming out can tend to drive perceptions. So if there is a lot of uncertainty around like what the waste levy will be able to be used for, that may then cause councils to either be extra cautious and say, oh, actually, let's hold back, or the other way around. So I would say that can affect us in the sense that what we're really wanting to see through the WMP is change and delivery. But if there's uncertainty and and councils are starting to hold back, it actually creates, it becomes counterproductive in some way. Having said that, some of the changes that have been talked about may well be beneficial. Like, for example, and this is just a Hutt City Council view, we did support the change towards 20% as a baseline flat fee. I understand not all councils supported that, but this is just is one way of providing more funding for the smaller councils that typically have struggled a little bit with. To put it quite bluntly, there's not a lot of stuff you can do if you just have 50 grand. You kind of need to look at bigger dollars when it comes to infrastructure changes and bigger changes in the waste sector.
Any other questions? Okay. So I'm actually going to move this one, but I'd love to see someone to second it and eagerly put that. Oh, Councillor Foon, thank you. So we'll move it and second it, but I note that we've done the presentation. We still have an opportunity to go through the plans in greater detail. I know that you foreshadowed a question in regards to that. Could we do that? But noting that I'm still considering this questions, I just need to make sure I had moved it and seconded it. So just so we're all kosher on that part of things. So could we go then to the next part of the presentation? The progress on the action, the regional plans, is that right? Right, so you want to put it in item 2.4 to answer those questions more precisely as opposed to 2.3, where the material that I'm referring to is being listed in item 2.3. Yeah. I think we're still in 2.3. Well, apart from the slides, if there's no other slides, then we'll go to questions. I have more precise questions I want to ask, and I think Councillor Foon did as well.
May I just suggest that Evie just briefly introduces the progress update paper, gives you a quick overview, and then we'll jump into Q&As.
If you're happy to do so, please proceed.
So the progress update just gives a brief overview of our progress against the regional actions and the regional targets for the second year of the WMP, which is 2024-2025. And it's one of our commitments in the WMP that we will provide an annual update on progress against this.
Okay. Councillor Foon, you had a specific question related to this, so would you like to lead out first?
It was the how will we measure the 2027 target?
Just to clarify, is this the interim waste to landfill target or the curbside recycling target?
Percent reduction. Reduce the total amount of material that needs final disposal to landfill by 10% by 2027.
So how we're measuring this at the moment is we're taking the levied waste to all the Class 1 landfills in the region, plus we're also looking at the known levied waste from the transfer stations in the region that's going to an out-of-region landfill. At the moment, we don't have a huge amount of, I guess, geographical data on movements of those areas that councils don't have oversight on, but we're taking it as the net levied waste to those Class 1 landfills and the known waste from the transfer stations, and then we're baselining it against the 2021-2022 data, as that's the final year reported in the previous waste assessment.
Very brief follow-up. You will see that on pages 47, for example, and other in that particular section of the report where it talks about how we're measuring the targets and performance, you will see the comment, I think it's in bold as well, that the overall confidence in some of this data is low. So this is a really critical point because bad data in, bad data out. So we do have various works in place to improve the data, but the reality is it stays relatively poor despite big good efforts. And that's because some of the data doesn't exist. It's not necessarily shared by the facilities. So we're doing the best we can to give us an overall idea of where we're heading.
Just following up on that, because I think that that is covered in points 8 through 10 of the executive summary. It would be useful, perhaps, in noting that answer is going to be relatively consistent in subsequent reporting periods as well, to understand precisely what additional sources of information we are trying to capture to improve that process. I note as well, especially for the new members, when they go back to their councils, they're going to be required under the relevant legislation to make prudent decision making. They will need access to as much information as possible to enable their legal responsibilities to make decisions on behalf of ratepayers. So could we get some commentary just around how to make sure that we are reporting that in our subsequent reports?
So we do have a relatively consistent basis of reporting this data. And if you look at page 48, for example, in the report, you'll see a bar chart there. And starting in 2021, and then there was quite a big lift, and it's been reducing since. Now, let's not sugarcoat this. This reduction is not because of how effective we've been. It's because of economic activity. So there was quite a lot of an increase in contaminated soil volumes, particularly in the 2021-22 time frame. And as construction demolition activity has effectively dried up as a result of recession, you've seen a reduction in waste volumes, and that's been pretty consistent across the landfills, including Silverstream and Lower Hutt. So the waste is going down. Now, one would think that, it just keeps going. I think that would be a fallacy. So it may well be increasing again once the economic activity picks up again, unless, and this is what I said earlier, unless we have infrastructure in place and the likes of construction and demolition processing facility in Porirua to actually drive this material to go somewhere else. So that's quite critical. So in some ways, it's less important to look at the overall performance. It's actually more critical to look at the projects that we are doing that will then change the dial to move into a different direction. So not just measuring outcomes, but outputs, the things that we put in place to shift the dial.
I'm going to take another question unless there's anybody else at this stage, because I still have a few questions to go through. But if there's anybody else, they can jump in now. I'm always going to be more inclined to get you guys speak than me as chair. No? Okay, we're going on. Can we then talk about the Sub-Regional Action 1 with regards to solid organic waste management? There are some risks that have been identified in there, and I want us to go into a little greater detail. The RFP process in particular, can you expand on what's on the report around the risk of not being able to have a successful process in that regard?
Mr. Chair, can you just confirm the page number you're on?
Well, I was on initially page 23, which would be page 23 of the document, but then there's another subsequent section of it, and I'll have to go back down to find it in the where are we? Is it 39 sub 74? Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay. So in terms of that's the Fogel project, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of the risks, clearly some of those are political in nature, and particularly when it comes to Hutt City Council, there's another decision to be made. based on the costings to be identified as a result of that procurement process for a processing solution. So that's how do you actually process this material that you do collect, and then the costings of in terms of collecting the material. And in Hutt City Council, we do have an existing service, so it would either mean amending the contract or establishing a new one to deliver that waste, collect that waste, shall I say. I guess with Wellington City, I'm just looking at my colleague Stephanie here, it's a slightly different because in principle decisions have already been made and implementation will effectively go ahead unless the costings and key parameters fall outside the scope of what was approved by council. You're nodding, so I must be getting it right. Now, there's several outcomes that may result as a result that comes out of this. One is that Wellington City will go ahead and Hutt City following a decision early next year, or it might mean that one of the councils pulls out, or it might mean that none of them will go ahead. Obviously, the impact on achieving targets will be quite fundamental. And the most likely chance of achieving the target is when both councils go ahead and effectively set up a service, and then that, by putting in place a processing solution, that will then also enable other councils and other commercial drivers to come on board. So effectively, this project, even though it's just Wellington and Hutt at the moment, is quite critical in terms of potentially enabling a lot of diversion of food and green organic material in the future. A sort of post-2028-29 period.
I guess, I don't raise it because of the potential risk going over the next 3 years. Now, the next question I had was with regards to the SR2, with regards to construction demolition waste, there was some language around there with regards to the implementation of the management plan requirements. Could I just get a clarity again around the timeframes in regards to that? There was that lovely graphic earlier on in the presentation with a nice little snake and so forth, and the two things that seem to be going in alignment with each other are the development of the sites, like the one in Porirua, for which I will thank Porirua City Council for their mahi in that regard, but also consistent regimes for the management plan requirements for C&D providers.
I think you're referring to the requirement under the bylaw for projects over $2 million to have a construction and demolition waste management plan submitted to councils for approval.
And I understand that we're still awaiting the material to come together, and that the templating is basically where we are at currently.
Yeah, so I can confirm that all the council officers are working and meeting regularly to determine the best way forward for that, what questions need to be asked, what the process is, what comms need to happen, what websites should look like. So that is progressing. A hard and fast deadline, I'm thinking we said within a year, May. That might be a little bit optimistic potentially, maybe June, right. July this year.
And that's also highly dependent on the workflows of each of the individual councils to sign off on those documents. That's from their side as well, correct?
That is correct, yes. And there's some complexities around councils having different requirements. So, for example, Wellington City Council wants online forms. Some people don't want online forms. How that all fits together, but what we're really committed to is trying to make it as consistent as possible, so that for builders who operate across the region, that they're not having to find different answers for different questions. So it does take a bit of time to pull that together, but it's definitely progressing.
Okay, I appreciate the assurance on that one. The other question was already covered previously with regards to the data availability. So my questions are done. Anybody else got any partai? Councillor Foon, you're back.
Yeah. Yeah, kia ora. And this is, I feel like I should know the answer, but I can't recall. Just in terms of FOGO for Hutt City, how critical is it around Silverstream landfill being filled up? Like, what's your tension there, I guess, and how will it contribute to that? And are councillors being made aware of that trade-off? Should ask you that.
So there's probably two projects you're referring to, and maybe I'll just talk about the first one, which is the residual waste future of residual waste study. Now, that was put into the WMP really largely driven by the fact that it takes a very long time to consent new landfills. You look at Auckland, the new regional landfill that they're trying to consent, that's been going on for 10 years. So when you look at the remaining life of the 3 landfills in the Wellington region, you're looking at Spicer at this point closing around 2030, not confirmed yet, but that's what it's looking like. So that's within, less than 5 years. We've got Southern Landfill that the SLEPO option has got how many years, Stephanie? I don't have that off the top of my head.
2.2 cubic million tonnes.
Yeah, so that's probably possibly 20 years. And you've got Silverstream Landfill currently consented until the late 2030s, but technically it may fill up by 2050, 2055. So 25, 30 years potentially. But it very much depends on how much waste is going in. So hence bring into play the various diversion opportunities. Now, when you look at FOGO, if you just look at Hutt City Lower Hutt volumes, they're not very significant. We're talking in the order of 5,000 tonnes. Now, Silverstream Landfill takes 150,000 tonnes per year, so that's not a very big number. But we need to, when we look at those projects, we need to look at, well, what's the future look like, and what happens if other councils come on board, and what happens if commercial organisations also then start to divert this waste, because you do have processing in place. No one can divert anything unless the processing in place. So the work that Hutt and Wellington are doing at the moment is really kind of an enabler for future diversion. So that 5,000 tonnes can easily potentially double or triple or become more, whatever the number might be. So that's one part. And then the other part is that other projects like the potential for a soil and aggregate facility at Silverstream that we're working with currently with Fulton Hogan on, the construction demolition waste facility in Porirua, which may open in December, all those factors contribute. So it's never just like you do one thing and we're done. It's actually several work streams and horses for courses. We need to find ways to tackle those, and the sum of all these things will then become a significant number of tonnes diverted, and that's when we're looking at potentially postponing the need for a new landfill by a few years or longer, or not, as the case may be, because when you look at the big increase in volumes 2 or 3 years ago as a result of economic activity, that was, if that were to continue, that would actually shorten the life of the landfill. So it's never just one thing. We need to look at the whole system and what that might enable.
Thank you. That was an excellent overview regionally. Most helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Finn? I've noted that we're coming very close to 10:30, so I do have one question that isn't for us to get into detail today, but it's more about trying to foreshadow a potential item that I think members of this committee will want to get into greater detail in the March meeting. And it's with regards to Action 3. So for those who are wondering, that's page 36. And this is our advocacy to central government for policies and initiatives. I would hope that by March we'd have some idea of what the legislative trajectory is on the amendments to the solid waste minimisation levy. Also noting that it is a general election year, it is an opportunity for members of this committee working with its individual councils to highlight areas of concern or interest that in our engagement with central government to highlight as a particular challenge. I'm trying to be very careful and diplomatic with regards to this, no partisanship here. The point being is, can officers foresee some capacity to bring that as a particular area of focus in our agenda for the March meeting?
So we could. There is an action or activity in our WMP that does talk about advocacy, and we do take up those opportunities from time to time. And there were quite a number of submissions earlier in the year. Sometimes a little bit difficult to come up with joint submissions because every council has its own decision-making process, and very quickly, given the timelines are not aligned with individual committee timelines, it usually is easier just let's coordinate a submission, but council send them individually. There are definitely, looking at the legislative calendar, we can certainly bring back a paper, and in fact it's covered partially in this one, about what's coming up, what we need to be ready for, and what you may want to focus on. That's certainly something we can do.
I think that's a prudent approach. We can talk more about that post-meeting as well in terms of the agenda for the next meeting, but I thank you for being open. And I just want to close before we go to morning tea, just to note that it is my expectation as chair to not be peppering you with additional responsibilities. We are here to, as has been already pointed out, to provide an oversight on the work of implementation of the plan that has been already passed. So I'm not here to rock the boat without a good reason. And in this instance, we have a general election next year. It is an opportunity to highlight particular concerns outside of existing legislative feedback mechanisms or consultative mechanisms. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Clark, you had your hand up briefly. I note that we may go, if it's a quick question, I'll let you have it, and then we'll go to morning tea.
So I'm actually just sending you a text about a meeting date that's incorrect in the schedule, but 8th of June. I'll send you the text.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's take a break to go and have morning tea, and then we'll come back. Is it normally 20 minutes or 15? We'll take 15 minutes. We'll be back here at 10:45. Thanks, everybody. back promptly through the recess. I hope you're all fed and watered. And everybody else online, we'll see you there. Good. Okay. Where we left off, we were on item 2.3. We were still in questions. I'm going to give the last opportunity of questions, and then if anyone wants to do debate, we'll do it immediately afterwards. So, any questions still left on the floor? No? Oh, Councillor Foon, just in the nick of time.
Just the container return scheme, is there any signals from government that that's been considered? Are we still working to have that in our big picture? Is there a sniff of it, or we're not even talking about it at the moment?
We haven't heard anything, so it's really difficult to comment on what may or may not happen. So it's no update effectively on this one.
Yep. Thank you.
With regards to that may be an opportunity for the next meeting with regards to our role as elected representatives and advocacy with central government under the objectives to highlight that as a particular area. Any other questions? Okay. Does anybody want to do any comment? No. I will then do the right of reply. I just wanted to highlight something that was brought to my attention by Councillor Holmes, because, and this is important for those new representatives. In the development of this plan, there was a great deal of work done by officers in terms of talking about what the alternatives were if we didn't proceed ahead with this plan, or we weren't going to push down this pathway of focus. And I think that that material would also be useful to have circulated with members of this committee, so as to help assist with trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible. I'm happy to work with officers to be a bit more precise about what that is, but I'd like to just make sure that that was noted at this stage. And thank you, Councillor Holmes, for bringing that suggestion to the table. Again, notwithstanding the request around the advocacy role, I think it is important for me to re-communicate to members of the committee our role right now is oversight, to help draw out risks, mitigations, to highlight the successes, and to draw the challenges that we have in this space. So it is about us manakiing the staff, the officers of each of the councils. It's also being good representatives going back to our councils and highlighting our commitment from a regional perspective. Obviously, in the past week, central government has talked a great deal about the need to share and collaborate more. I've always felt that this community always did its best work by collaborating together. I'm going to leave it there. We have had a mover. We've had a seconder. There are no amendments. We've got the substantive right here. We're going to the vote. Here we go. All those in favour, hand up and aye. 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 To the contrary, I'm told that the standing orders at Wellington City don't allow for abstentions. Yeah. So we won't bother about them. No. The motion is carried. Let us therefore move on to item 2.4. Now, for those members of the committee who aren't aware about this, this is I would like to think is more procedural than most, this item. It just highlights the decisions that have been made. The Wellington City Council website has a register that you can go and check to see where things have progressed on it. And as the report states, you can then go to officers to seek questions offline as well. Do officers want to speak anything to this, Amelia?
Happy to take the paper as read.
I think that's a great idea. Questions? Comment? We're going to the vote. Look at that. I mean, like what? We do need to move. Oh, we need to move in a seconder. Who would like to move it? Oh, come on, Councillor Holmes. Would you like to do it this time? There we go. We've got him on the table. And Councillor Halliday, would you like the second? It is done. Okay, we've got a mover. We've got a seconder. We're all ready to go. Now it's almost time. Here comes the vote. All those in favour, hands up and aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No abstentions. It's carried. Well done. So, we are now at the conclusion of the meeting. Well done, everybody. We will now do the closing karakia. I'll just lead. You can recite as much as the meeting closes at 10 minutes to 11. Okay, hino tātou. Unihia ki te uru tapa nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tēnana, te wairua, i te ara takatū, koia rā e rongo, whakahiria ake ki runga, kia wātea, ai rā, kia waitea. Kia ora everybody, I hope everyone who is watching that is still awake, kia ora.